Hey everyone, MythicODM here, and today I want to continue to chat about the Starfinder 2 classes and the playtest. So as you know, Paizo launched this playtest for the second edition of their extremely successful sci-fi and fantasy RPG back at Gen Con in 2024. So today I want to dive into my second favorite class, which is the Solarian. If you missed my talk about my favorite class, the Operative, that'd be in the previous video. You can go watch that and come on back. But the Solarian is your brute squad, your tank. They are the knight. They are the wall of steel between you and your enemy. They wield the power of solar and gravity. Now, again, if you've not watched my previous videos, I go into a little bit more background detail on the whole Starfinder, the playtest, etc. It also talks about backgrounds and ancestries, and you may want to take a quick peek at that video and then come on back, because I'll be going over my suggested ancestries. Again, play what you want, but I have a few suggestions. I never suggest human, again, because human have a basic +2 to 2 different boosts, and they fit perfectly in every one. So go ahead and play human if you want. They will fit in this class absolutely fine. Now, I will put down in the description a link to the Starfinder playtest, the Nexus Demiplane Starfinder character builder, which is free on Demiplane, and a link to Archives of Nethys. Archives of Nethys is the Pathfinder 2e resource. It has all the rules for Pathfinder on it for free, so you do not have to invest anything in those rules if you do not wish to. And hey, while you're down the description, looking at those links and stuff, be great if you could, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and maybe even hit the bell for notifications on new videos. All right, let's get into the Solarian, shall we? All right, the Solarian is your strength-based class. They are essentially your fighter, which is, some people might think it's odd that you'd think the soldier is the fighter, but the soldier actually isn't technically this kind of fighter. The Solarian is the get into the face of your enemy with your sword and board, with your shield, with your melee weapons, and get into their face and block other people from getting around you. They start with 10 hit points plus the Constitution modifier, which obviously makes sense for what they do. All right, some of the big things to note is they are expert in perception, which is pretty normal. They are trained in fortitude, which is interesting. I would have actually thought they would have been expert in fortitude, but they're actually expert in reflex and will, which is, again, interesting for the character. They are trained in athletics, so they obviously get that. Plus you get 3 plus your intelligence modifier. You're only trained in simple and unarmed attacks. You are not expert in any of those, which again is interesting. You are trained in light, medium, and unarmored defense as well, so you're not trained immediately in heavy armor. Now, one of the big things for this character is called the stellar attunement. So the way it works is you have 2 aspects. You have photon, which is the power of the stars to emit heat and light and plasma, or graviton, which is the power of the stars to attract and imprison objects through gravity. Now, at any time you're considering graviton attuned, photon attuned, or unattuned. This is important because you will always be in one of those states. So many abilities and effects are based on being attuned to one of these forces. And at first level, you do need to actually attune. So one of the things you can do during your downtime activity is actually stay in attunement control, which is a exploration activity, kind of like the same as being defensive or repeating a cast spell or following the expert, etc. And you can stay attuned to not your favored attunement, which is weird to say, but sometimes you don't want to start your combat with your favorite attunement. You may have a reason for it, but your attune it's an action once per round. You steady your body and mind to attune yourself to your stellar focus. If you're unattuned or not in your favored state, you become attuned to the favorite state attunement of your stellar arrangement. You can also manifest any of your solar manifestations if they're currently dormant, and if you have free hands to use them in, and we'll get that in a minute. So in addition to the above usage, you can also attune as a free action when you roll initiative, which is really nice. So you don't spend the first action of your combat having to attune yourself. You can do it as a free action, which again is really good for it. So solar manifestations, basically you have a couple different ones to pick from. So you have a solar manifestation. All right, solar manifestations are a deep understanding of the stellar forces of the universe manifest in a variety of tangible ways. You can create and maintain all 3 different manifestations: the solar flare, a solar nimbus, and a solar weapon. Your manifestations temporarily vanish if you become unattuned. That can be a reason for it. Certain feats can have you untuned. I believe if you go unconscious, you become unattuned, etc. So, but you can have all three of these things rolling at the exact same time. So the first one is Solar Flare. A small mote of solar power hovers nearby or appears embedded on some part of your body, such as the palm of your hand or on your face. This flare of energy can unleash energy in a short range. Your solar flare is otherwise treated as a martial ranged weapon in the brawling weapon group. And with it, you can use a single action called a solar shot. So you have to be attuned. Obviously, you have to be a Solarian, and it's an attack action, which means it will suffer from multiple attack penalties if you try to use it more than once. Basically, you have you make a ranged strike against the armor class of a creature in your range. Add your strength modifier to the damage roll, which is really nice for a ranged shot. A lot of the times that does not happen. You normally don't get to add anything to it unless you're a thief in Pathfinder. But so you roll your attunement determines the damage. So again, you have to be attuned. And if you're graviton attuned, you do 1d8 bludgeoning damage, and it's 15 feet long. On a critical success, you can attempt a trip using your athletics, even if you don't have a free hand or are not adjacent to the target, because those are the basic rules of a trip, so you can bypass those. If you're photon attuned, you do 1d6 fire and you have a range of 30 feet. On a critical success, the target also takes d6 persistent fire damage, which is really nice. And the damage increases by 1 die for every 4 levels you have. All right, the second ability is called Solar Nimbus, and you basically throw yourself some armor, a glowing layer of it, or it can be solid darkness, which is kind of cool. And depending on your current state of attunement, again, your attunement is very important. So again, as a reaction, you take damage from melee attack. If you're graviton attuned, the triggering creature must succeed at a fortitude save against your class DC or be pushed 5 feet. And if you're photon attuned, the creature takes fire damage equal to half your level rounded up. So again, it always will be whether you want to be graviton or photon attuned, and sometimes unattuned. All right, here's the cool one. Solar Weapon. Through sheer will, you call forth a tangible weapon comprised of the essence of stars. When you attune, you can manifest your weapon as part of this action. So again, you can do a lot of stuff. When you roll initiative, you have a free action to attune. And as a free action, you can also basically fire up one of these weapons, which is really, really cool. Your solar weapon is a martial melee weapon. It deals D8 of your choice of bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. You can select up to the 2 following traits of your weapon. Alternatively, you can select the reach trait for your weapon instead of taking 2 of the following traits. So it allows you to do things like disarm, grapple, parry, sweep, versatile, having a free hand, which is good for doing other actions that require a free hand, such as grappling, tripping, disarming, etc. You can have it do non-lethal. You can have the ability to shove or to trip. And again, you can just ignore all those and have reach on it. Now, you can select one of the following weapon groups for your weapon to be part of, which is the axe, club, hammer, pick, spear, sword, polearm, knife, flail, or the brawling group. So again, I see so much flavor of this character just picking what kind of weapon you have. And the cool thing is, every single time you pick it up or turn on your weapon, you get to make these choices again. So at one point, it could be a disarming and trip polearm. It could be a parry and sweep spear, etc., etc. So there's so many different things you can do with this character and really, really make it part of your background, which is really cool. So you can change a property of your solar weapon through the Reforged Solar Weapon activity, which is a downtime activity. Your solar weapon gains additional benefits based on your current attunement. So again, if you're attuned a certain way, the weapons will do a certain thing. If it's graviton attuned, when you successfully strike a creature using your solar weapon, that creature treats all squares adjacent to the square where they struck as being difficult terrain until your next turn. That means they can't just step away from you. They have to move, which can create reactive strikes from the solar if you have that ability. Photon attuned, when you successfully strike a creature with your solar weapon, you deal an additional amount of fire damage equal to half your level round up. So again, just really fun flavor with these characters. And again, it depends whether you're going to be gravity attuned or photon. You can make that choice at the beginning of your turn. Ooh, that barely makes it in there. All right, the Reforged Solar Weapon. So to reforge a solar weapon, you spend 10 minutes focusing on the composition of your solar weapon. You can change the damage type of your weapon, typically between bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, and the currently selected traits of your weapon, the weapon group, etc. What happens a lot of time during Pathfinder and now Starfinder, after a combat, you're going to take a short rest. You're going to take an exploration activity where you take 10 minutes to do something. A lot of the times it is using the treat wounds ability under medicine. It can be refocusing for spells. And this one allows you to reforge your solar weapon and change it everything. So you can't change it during a combat, but you can change it between combats. Now, at 5th level, you get solar weapon expertise, which means all your simple, martial, and unarmed attacks all increase to expert, which gives you an extra +2 to hit, and that's at 5th level. You also gain the critical specialization effect for the solar weapon. So depending on what the solar weapon can do, if you critical, it'll have additional abilities that it can do, and you can trigger them now at 5th level. Now, some of the key terms you need to know is attuned, which means you have to attune to have certain abilities, certain things you want to do, you have to be attuned. Cycles, action with the cycle trait, change your stellar attunement to the opposite state. And I've seen a lot of this in the feats and stuff that you can choose. It will swap your state around, which can be very interesting for changing the way your armor works, the way your solar manifestations work, etc. Disharmony, actions with the disharmony trait, change your current stellar attunement to being unattuned. And again, we'll go into that and you can see a few of those. So when you're attuned, certain things won't work and you'll have to reattune, which is that single action. Flourish is a general term that is used in Pathfinder. Anything with the flourish tag in it can only be used once a turn because it has so much bravado to it that you can't do it more than once. And anything with the manifestation trait, any feat with that, enhance or alter your solar manifestations or allow you to create a new type of solar manifestation. So we'll be looking at that as we keep going. You also see at level 13 is where you become a master of all your Solarian weapons, and your Solarian class DC becomes expert. Class DCs are always going to lag behind casting, spell casting DCs and stuff. So this is something to be aware of, is a lot of abilities, if they run off your class ability, get much weaker over time because the creatures you face will have better saving throws, better bonuses to hit, and that lags a lot behind, so it's not the best thing. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the solar arrangements. Again, Pathfinder and Starfinder use basically a subclass style system that you might be familiar with if you're coming from 5th edition. These you get at 1st level, and it chooses the path that your character takes. You have several different options for this character. Each has an ability that they go through, which they call revelations. So you have one at 1st level, one at 9th level, and one at 15th level, and you get those as you go up. So you want to take a look at these and kind of figure out which one you like better, and then go with that, because once you take this, you pretty much cannot change these unless your GM allows you to swap your revelations during a downtime activity, which is 1 week, a month worth of downtime for a character. So it's not something you can lightly do to change. So that'll be up to your GM. The first solar arrangement you have is called balanced. Favorite attunement is graviton and photon. Choose which attunement you have outside of combat. When using the attune action, you can select which attunement you wish to be. Revelations, you gain the ones that we're going to talk about underneath here. Your initial revelation is 1st level. You get Beneric Assault. It is a 2-action ability. You coordinate your attacks with both your solar flare and solar weapon. Make a strike with the solar weapon and a solar shot, each using your current multiple attack penalty and both at the same target. You can make these attacks in whichever order you desire. If an attack hits, resolve the damage and effects, then swap your current attunement. This counts as 2 attacks when calculating your multiple attack penalty. If both attacks fail to hit, you become unattuned. So there is a gamble on this one. The 9th level advanced revelation is a reaction called Ascended Stability. The triggering is an ability or effect would cause you to become unattuned. You take a fraction of a moment to recenter yourself and remember the balance that calms the violent spectrums of the cycle. You do not become unattuned or remain your current state. Basically, if you get that fail to attune, or if you fail to hit both attacks and become unattuned, you can use this reaction to keep your attunement in check. It does burn up your reaction for your turn, but better that than possibly becoming unattuned and not being able to use a lot of your abilities. 15th level, astrological sense, a single action. You can only use it once every 10 minutes. And you briefly meditate on your connection to the cosmos and how the interplay between stellar forces can affect your foes. For the remainder of your turn, if an action you take would result in a variable effect based on your attunement, determine the results of both effects. If this determination requires you to roll damage, then roll damage. If it requires a target to make a save, then have them make a saving throw. This only applies to damage or effects that are specified in the attunement options of abilities. So things like the damage roll for your solar weapon are not determined in advance. Once you've determined the possible effects for both attunements, you can select which of the two you would like to have occur, regardless of your current attunement. If the ability would change your state, you count as being attuned to whatever attunement state you select the effect to take. It's a really funky way to not have to make a choice when it comes to certain things. I love it. All right. The second stellar arrangement you have is the Degradant. Basically, it is a favored attunement is strictly Graviton. And of course, we're going to go into the other abilities underneath it. The initial revelations first level is a 2-action black hole. And you'll notice it's the same 2-action as the binaric assault. Frequency of this is only once every 10 minutes though, and you have to be Graviton attuned. You concentrate on the gravitational forces around you, pulling matter towards you in an emulation of a cosmic event. Select any number of creatures within a 30-foot radius. Each creature takes D8 bludgeoning damage and must attempt a fortitude against your DC. Again, the DC is your class DC. A critical success, the creature's unaffected. Success, creature takes half damage, pulled 5 feet towards you. Failure, full damage, pulled 15 feet and knocked prone. Critical failure, takes double damage, pulled 30 feet towards you and is knocked prone. And this damage increases every 2 levels. Your 9th level advanced revelation is Defy Gravity. You break the bonds of gravity, you gain a fly speed equal to your speed while you are Graviton attuned. So again, one thing you'll notice in both Pathfinder and Starfinder, you don't get to fly at first level. That just never happens. It's always very, you have to be very specific ancestry to get the ability to fly, or it is something that you grow into by use of wings or other abilities such as this advanced revelation that come much later in the game where other creatures will be flying and stuff. So it's not like you're going to be always, blasting around and assaulting people from. The 15th level greater revelation is a 3-action singularity once per hour, and you have to be Graviton attuned. You concentrate and manifest the pinpoint center of a black hole within 60 feet. It occupies a single 5-foot space. Creatures within the singularity space take 10d8 void damage with a basic reflex save, or against your class DC. Again, it's going to be weaker, especially as you go up in levels. Any creature dropped to 0 hit points with effect is torn asunder and pulled into the singularity. Rude. Leaving no remains. Till the end of your next turn, the singularity space and all adjacent squares has an area of supernatural darkness that no creatures, even those with greater dark vision, which is very important, can see through. Creatures beginning their round within the area of darkness must succeed a fortitude save against your class DC or become slowed per round. And this increases by +2 every levels. So this increases 17th and 19th by 2d8. So by 19th level, it'll be doing 14d8 damage. So the final one we have is the Radiant, which is, not shockingly, the Photon. So again, your initial revelation is a 2-action ability once every 10 minutes, and you have to be Photon attuned. You unleash your pent-up aggression, causing it to erupt like the stellar events that end stars. You choose to affect creatures in a 15 or 30-foot emanation. Each creature takes D8 fire, must attempt a fortitude save against your class DC. If you choose a 30-foot option, you instead deal 1d6 fire damage. So you do get to figure out how much damage you want to do. Again, it has your basic saves. So crit success, no effect. Success, creature takes half damage and then dazzled for 1 round. Failure is a creature takes full damage and then blinded for 1 round. Critical failures, creature takes double damage and blinded for 1 minute. That is so crazy if that happens, but it is every level. It goes up D8 or D6. So that's a pretty decently scaling ability. Your 9th level ability is Solar Wind, and you basically become a blur of stellar matter that carries invisible solar winds. While Photon attuned, you get a +10-foot circumstance bonus to speed and can move through the space of a single unwilling creature each time you stride. So again, remember, you can stride 3 times per turn, which if you're a normal creature, you're moving about 25. So you'd be able to move 35 and move through 1 unwilling creature each time you stride. So if some little minion is trying to get in the way from you and the big bad guy, you could kick this on and literally walk through them, because normally you cannot. You'd have to use a shove action or a tumble through action to break through those squares. All right, your 15th level is a 3-action Big Bang. You can only use it again once per hour, and you have to be Photon attuned. You call upon the cosmic force that created the universe, unleashing a blast of pure cosmic fire that reverts to all things to their basic components and overcomes even magical defenses. So it fills a 30-foot emanation and deals 10d6 fire damage with a reflex save against your class DC. You and any number of selected adjacent allies are unaffected by this blast, which is really good, but they have to be adjacent to you. So, you know, you have to be very careful when you're blasting this off. Again, it is your basic save. So, you know, critical success, there's no damage. Success, half damage. Failure takes full damage, 2d6 persistent. Critical failure takes double damage, 46 fire damage. And you can attempt to counteract a spell on the creature using half your level rounded up as the counter rank. All right, we're getting into some feats that I really like. At first level, I like Stellar Rush. This is basically like a sudden charge in Pathfinder on steroids. You rush forward, empowering your stellar energies, getting the thick combat stride twice. You gain a plus 10 circumstance bonus to your speed during these moves. So when you stride, you move your full movement. So this would be, again, let's take it, just an average character runs 25 feet. You'd move 35 feet and gain, so you get a plus 10 on your speed during these moves. So it's plus 10, the way I read it, plus 10 to your first stride, which is 35 feet, and plus 10 on your second, which is a 70 feet grand total. That is a ton of ground you can cover and get right into someone's face. Now, one of the things you have to think of is the campaign you're going to be on. If you're going to be a lot of close quarters combat, this might not be the best feat. If you think you're going to be out in the wide open, you know, exploring plants and stuff, and you're going to be on areas that you're not going to be starting so close to your opponents, this is actually a very solid feat. Now, when you're Graviton attuned, when you finish your strides, enemies within 15 feet of you must attempt a fortitude save against your class DC. On a failure, the foes are pulled directly towards you, ending in an adjacent square if possible. You select the order of which foes are moved. So you basically just form a little, you know, a little black hole as you move. And remember, this is when you finish your strides. So I would assume this is both strides, not you finish one stride, pull everyone towards you, and then get the second stride and pull everyone towards you. You, as a GM, may want to rule it that way. If, you know, literally you're collecting people as you move, which is pretty impressive, especially if, you know, within 15 feet is actually a pretty big bubble. If you're photon attuned, the squares you move through during your stride are suffused with solar energy until the start of your next turn. Creatures on each side of the squares are concealed from creatures on the opposite side. Creatures in these spaces are unaffected. So again, it's really good for if you want to keep things away from your friends and have things focus on you. Giving them concealment is extremely important. Now remember, it works both ways. So people on, let's say the north side, you run east to west. On the north side of you, they're going to be concealed from those who are on the south side of that line you move or whatever. So you can make some pretty interesting combinations with this one. That's why I really like it. I think maneuverability on the battlefield to me is very important. That's why I really do like Solar Rush. Another first level feat I really like, Solar Shield. Basically, you get to create a small shield of celestial energy. The energy shield does not require a hand to use. It floats near you, which is really nice. That means you always have a hand free, even though you have a shield around you. You can raise a shield, which you can find in the player core, giving a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC until the start of your next turn. So while the shield is raised, you can use a shield block reaction with your shield. The shield has 5 plus 2 times your level hit points and no hardness. Your shield can't be broken, but if it is destroyed, which shields can take damage and they will get destroyed, you cannot manifest a new shield for 10 minutes. So it's basically very akin to the shield spell, except that obviously it needs to get bulkier as you go up in levels, hence why it gives you extra hit points, and it has no hardness, which means it just, you know, whatever damage gets done to it, gets done to it, and it just blows through the shield. So at first level, it would have 7 hit points, which is really nice. So it's a very sturdy shield, and I really like the fact that it has different abilities, especially depending if you are Graviton or Photon attuned. Graviton attuned, your shield has hardness equal to half your level rounded up. Photon attuned, if your shield is destroyed, adjacent enemies must succeed a fortitude save against your class DC or be dazzled for 1 round. On a critical fail, they're blinded for 1 round. So again, really fun abilities. I would be looking at picking this one up as well, if you're especially when you're thinking about going like the sword and board and you want to have a hand free. At second level, I liked the Shattering Impact feat. It's a 2 action ability. You pull all your effort into making a single attack with your solar weapon that has such force, it shatters the weapon. Strike with your solar weapon. Increase the size of the weapon damage die by 1 step, which means if it's a D4, it goes to D6, D6 to D8, D8 to etc, etc, etc. Nothing ever goes past a D12. By the way, you don't step from a D12 to a D20. Your solar weapon shatters and must be manifested to use it again. Now, if you're graviton attuned, if you hit your target, they take a -10-foot status penalty to speed until the start of your next turn. So what you'd want to do with that is you'd want to hit, do the extra damage. If they take the -10 penalty, you could then actually move away from them to disengage basically and make them chase after you. But at -10 speed, you might be able to outrun them or have them burn 1 or 2 actions even to get back into your face. Photon attuned, if you hit your target, they take an additional persistent fire damage equal to half your level rounded up. So nice little bonus there on the fire damage. At 4th level, I liked Empowered Nimbus. You've mastered using your Nimbus to diffuse incoming damage. When you Nimbus Surge, you gain resistance equal to half your level rounded up. The type of resistance depends on your attunement. So again, if you're graviton attuned, your resistance applies to physical damage, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, which is most of the very common effects that you're going to have when you're fighting. Photon attuned, your resistance applies to the energy damage. So acid, cold, electricity, fire, and sonic. So it's really good to know, to see what people are attacking you with, and then you can use your Nimbus that way. 4th level, I also liked Plasma Ejection. You unleash an ejection of plasma, hitting every creature of your choice in 10-foot emanation centered on yourself or in a 30-foot line. So you do have some options in this one. Each creature in the area takes 3d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. A creature critically fails takes d8 persistent electrical damage. Now, if you're graviton attuned, a creature failing the save is knocked prone. And if you're photon attuned, the fire damage becomes the d8s. This scales up every 2 levels, so 6, 8, 10, etc., etc., and it damages by either d6 or d8, depending on what it is. But so it's a nice little, again, ramp up damage ability that keeps its power in line with the rest of the abilities of higher levels. Also at 4th level, I do like Reactive Strike. Reactive Strike is just basically someone does something that in your area. They use a manipulation action, a move action, range attack, leaves a square with a move action, unless the step does not provoke, because the step stipulates it doesn't provoke. You basically get to make a strike with your weapon, which is really nice. If you critical hit and the trigger was a manipulate action and your multiple attack penalty doesn't account to the strike. So Reactive Strike's really good. 4th level, it's a pretty solid choice as well. At 6th level, a feat I liked was Starbound. It is a single action. Requirements are your last action's turn was a successful strike with a solar weapon or a successful solar shot. So you mark the target of your last attack with a potent brand of solar energy that keeps them visible and improves the effects of your attacks against them. So triple the range of your solar shot when you target the branded creature. So if they try to get away during their turn, you still have a really good range on them. An invisible creature affected by the brand or who later becomes visible becomes concealed instead. And there are different states of being able to see someone. Invisible is one of the best abilities you can have. If the branded creature was already concealed for any other reason, it is no longer concealed. So these all affect your attack rolls by bumping a person's defense or having a straight flat check to actually even attack that person depending on their level of concealment. So what I liked at 8th level was Flicker Strike. It is a 2-action ability, but it does have the teleportation. So what happens is you attack the target with your solar weapon and use the speed of light to shift to another foe within range. Now the range is within your movement. So if you hit, you select a creature within the range of your speed, normally about 25 feet. You teleport to any square in range that's within reach of the creature selected, which remember, if you could have a weapon that is actually giving you reach, so you could be a square away from them. If your initial strike fails, you don't teleport and the action ends. So you do have to declare this before you do attack because it does take 2 actions. If you're graviton attuned, increase the range to double your speed so you can move normally up to 50 if you have another ability that allows you to have, or magic or anything giving you bonuses to your speed, this can go more. Because it is teleportation, it does not provoke reactive strikes as you leave that square. Photon attuned, if a strike was made as part of this action, it is a crit success. The struck target is dazzled until the end of its next turn. Not as good as the gravity attuned, just because you have to critical it. Now, criticaling in Pathfinder and Starfinder is a lot easier than in 5e and stuff, but still, having a crit success to dazzle them, I think, is a little bit much. I would just allow it on a regular strike. Your player may or may not find it overpowered. You might find it overpowered if every single time they hit, someone becomes dazzled, but that's up to you to make a call on it. But the critical success is a little bit rough on it. All right, 12th level, we're jumping up a little bit. I like the 2-action wormhole. It is, again, once per hour. Now, remember, it does have the cycle tag, which means it will swap your attunement. So you force a rip in space that acts as a tunnel to a nearby location. Create 2 wormholes in unoccupied squares that are within 100 feet visible to you and at least 15 feet apart. If a creature enters the space of a wormhole, it emerges into an adjacent space to the other wormhole that the creature desires. If there is no valid space for the creature to enter, then both wormholes collapse and the creature remains in the space where it entered the first wormhole. Wormhole lasts for 1 round before collapsing, but you can sustain it for up to 1 minute. Sustain takes 1 of your actions per turn, but you can keep this going for up to a minute. A good way to get people in and out of places. The attuned effects of this ability only apply to your attunement when you create the wormhole. Now remember, it is cycle, so it's going to swap your attunement around. So Graviton attuned, a creature beginning its turn adjacent to a wormhole must succeed a fortitude save against your DC or be pulled into the wormhole. A creature entering the wormhole becomes concealed until the start of your next turn if you're photon attuned. Now, I guess a good question would be, can you put one under a person and put one 100 feet in the air or beside the person and put it 100 feet in the air and try to suck them in? I would find that a solid use of it. Again, it's once per hour, so this is not something that's going to be happening every single combat, and it will limit it because a lot of times you don't have that much time in between multiple combats in the game. So I think I would allow it, and go from there. But it could be pretty rough. At 14th level, I like the free action, a Stellar Shield Collapse. Prerequisite is you have to have that solar shield from level 1. The trigger is your solar shield is destroyed when you have it raised. So you had it raised, you use your shield block action and it breaks. Requirements, you haven't used black hole or supernova within the last 10 minutes. Your solar shield collapses in on itself with destructive results. If you're gravity attuned, immediately use the black hole as a free action. If you are photon attuned, immediately use a supernova as a free action if you have those abilities. So these all stack on each other, solar shield, and then either black hole or supernova. So you'll want to take a look at those as well. At 16th level, I liked Attuned Blow. You can use your manifestations immediately upon attuning yourself. When you take the attune action, you can make a strike with your solar weapon or solar shot as a free action after you become reattuned. So that is really handy. Again, there are reasons why you may become unattuned. This allows you to just hop up in there, reattune, get that strike off, and keep fighting, which is really nice. At 20th level, I liked Perfectly Attuned. You have absolute control and understanding of your attunement with the stellar forces of the cosmos. If you'd become graviton or photon attuned, you instead become perfectly attuned. When you're perfectly attuned, you can choose which attunement bonus to benefit from either graviton or photon when using any of your abilities. If any of your abilities require you to be in a specific attunement state, being perfectly attuned counts as your choice of graviton or photon attuned. So that is, again, this is 20th level stuff. A lot of the times campaigns kind of collapse in around 11, 12. Pathfinder has a lot more options and a lot more balanced play to go up to the 20th level, but you're still looking at it, unless you're starting your campaign very high, you're still looking at literally 2 to 3 years of playing every other week for 4 hours to get anywhere near 20th level. So just be aware of that when you're looking at some of the higher level stuff, is to, aim for it, build for it, but talk with your GM and see if the campaign is even getting to that level. They may not want to be creating anything up in that level. You never know. Now, there are a few different ancestries that you can definitely pick that would be beneficial for this class, mostly because they have a strength boost in them. Again, human, solid choice. But the other ones I would suggest would be the Kasathan, which is a strength and wisdom boost. Wisdom isn't bad, gives you a better willpower saving throw, gives you a good bump on checks for wisdom-based skills. I would also suggest possibly the Vesk, being a plated or war blood heritage. Again, their strength and con boost. Now, the con boost, of course, means you're going to get more health, more hit points as you go up in levels, and Constitution also increases your fortitude saving throw. So those would pretty much be my 3 picks. Anything else is pretty much solid. Again, I would just kind of stay away from anything with a strength negative on it, just because it is your primary. And again, in Pathfinder and Starfinder, every +1 matters. Okay, one thing as we wrap up that you need to be aware, and I've already stated this before in many of my other videos, is that archetypes are not in the playtest. And archetypes are basically how you multi-class in Pathfinder and Starfinder 2e. So you don't have that ability in the playtest like they're meant to be. Don't go out of your way to build rules into it, because what you build into the game or you try to homebrew they being Paizo may have already thought of what you're looking at, and they will be putting out more information in the next couple of months for more additional stuff to play test, such as vehicles and things like that. They are taking a lot of information on their website. Again, the link is down in the description, and you can fill out those forms, let them know what you think about these classes, feats, etc. Everything helps them actually build for the book, which is going to be coming out at Gen Con 2025. And so basically that is it for the playtest of the Solarian. Again, thank you very much for hanging out with me today in this pretty lengthy video. Now, let me know what you like about this Gravity Knight. Is it a class you would play? I know I would. What are the weaknesses? What kind of style would you play for this character? Would you go Graviton, Photon? What would you like to do? I'd love to hear your comments down below, but that is it for me today, and I thank you all, and I will see you in the next video where I will be discussing the Soldier. If you're enjoying the content and want to see more, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and even click the bell for notifications on new videos. It'd be great if you also left a comment or even your favorite emoji to help with the infamous YouTube algorithm. Maybe if you're interested in helping out the channel a little bit, join my Patreon or the YouTube membership. Both provide exclusive channels in my Discord, among other perks that I'm working on, such as adventures, maps, and all that fun stuff. In the meantime, in the between time, that's it for me today, and may all your games be full of myth, mirth, and magic. Bye for now.